We need to consider how children and youth develop. Obviously, we just looked at 5-year-olds and their way of being able to take in information. And there's so many things that can be done, and it's over and over and over. The big thing is repetitive for them to learn. But it's not that for everybody. So we're going to look at this one. Okay, so I'm not going to go through everything, but I was thinking it would be good for like the faith development, because we're kind of focused on biblical, and then the brain development. Though actually all of these, the physical development is important because of the and mental, because when you're using like different types of ways of helping people learn, you want to know the physical. All right, let's just look at it. 0 to 3, which are toddlers. No, you probably aren't going to be teaching this, but if you become a parent, as Barney, you will have some of this. Beginning to trust, comes to know self, separate from parents, can say no, senses love of parents and of those in Christian community.
In a church, though, you will get
yes.
this division.
Yes.
The first church I was at, they had the
0 to 3, right.
Group, and then they would have the 4 to 7, and then they would have...
Right. Yeah, so this is kind of more of the... Actually, this can be a little bit... I almost can say you could actually divide this a little bit too, but it depends. So, physical development in a 0 to 3, fast physical growth and changes, grasps, sits, crawls, stands, wakes, hand-eye coordination improves, so on. Rapid acquisition of brain connections stimulated through experience. Mental and intellectual actions first based on reflexes begins to separate self from others, and searches, imitates, learns from concrete activities and objects. This is a big imitation time where you can, especially is 1 to 2 time period, is like they imitate everything you say and everything you do, and facial expressions and so on. So they're really imitating everything. And it's kind of cute. Like we often laugh and we'll have them say, do this and do that, and they'll laugh and so on. So relationships with adults, primary, dependent on parents, parenting persons, self-centered, often shy with stagers, parallel play. So they're playing. Can you see the bottom part? And
yeah.
Can you read it?
Especially on there.
Yeah, can you read it? Because I don't have it. I can
That
get it.
last sentence.
Yeah.
Develops relational skills through group experience.
Okay. Through group experience. Okay. Cool. All right. I'm just going to say this because I also do a lot of TPM with people.
Yeah.
Basically, between, I think, even conception, but like later birth or later in the womb to well, about around here is like what we get most of our beliefs that come in. And so it's like, it's such an incredibly important part of the development of a person. And so I just want you to be aware of that. So what you're saying and how you're doing things actually is really important. And when I was in kindergarten teacher was very condescending on me, and I was one of the few white people in the class. I think there was 2 or 3 of us at the most, and everybody else was Asian. So I was, totally stuck out. And she was picking on me because I couldn't tie my shoe. And I was humiliated in front of the whole class. And it really made an impression on me. Something inside of me crumpled. And I got very shy after that. So a very sweet Asian young man came up and tied the shoe for me. So that was lovely. But it really hit me. So that's those kinds of things, how we talk to these little ones, and at this point, it's really important. It's just like watch and I guess create that safe space, just like this woman was doing, creating a safe place. So.
But also on the same thing, it's so important for us to spend time reflecting on our life in those issues, because it might be that otherwise to bring healing for us.
Oh, definitely, yeah. And God has. I've done TPM with it,
Yeah.
so.
I was talking to someone about those,
Mhm.
so often we forget about them.
Yeah. And you will know, this is what happens. It's good to reflect, but sometimes it just erupts. If something comes up and all of a sudden we're like kind of going crazy inside, and it's usually because it's tapping into that hurt or that pain that's been there. And so then be aware and go, okay, I need to talk to somebody or pray with someone and do that. So Ed Smith, who started TPM, he says he does it all the time for himself. So you can do it for yourself, but it's also good to do it with other people, especially when there's hard things. And he said he thinks everyone needs to do that till the day they die, because it's like we have all got so many lies that we listen to and believe about ourselves, and it's all because of this part of our life. So anyway, just be aware. If you notice something going on, they call it the smoke rising, and there's probably some fire that happened. And if you've had any training, you know what that means. But anyway, why don't I have someone read 4 through 7 group?
All of them?
Yeah. Bless you.
Imitates religious behavior of adults, begins to ask religious questions, expresses wonder, joy, thanksgiving, and praise, begins to use faith language. Physical development, talks more clearly, runs, skips, jumps, throws, catches, climbs, childhood diseases. Brain development, brain connections continue to be stimulated through experiences, pruning of synapses begin. Mental and intellectual development, episodic thinking, begins to differentiate real from imaginary, learns best from concrete activities, recalls, invents, begins to converse. Interpersonal relationships, relationships with adults primary, parallel play moves to relational play, develops relational skills through group experience, increases empathy, sees big people as good.
Cool. So basically, this is the group that we were just looking at. Concrete, not abstract, concrete. That's actually what she was doing. It's concrete. She was making it very concrete for them. Now we think 5, and it's actually abstract because we don't need to see 5. We get it. We know 5. So we've moved on from there. Anything that in that list that you're thinking, what does that mean? There's one that I want to point out, but yes, okay. That's the one I was going to look at. So remember when Tim was talking about those neurons and they were the connections, and so what I found out too is that there's a point in our, so you'll see kids, they want to read the same book over and over and over and over again. Or they want to watch a same video over and over and over again. Those are those neurons being laid down. And then so what I saw and found out is that there's a point in this period of time where they realize, oh, I don't use that very much and I don't need it. And so it's like it prunes it out so that it's only the primary parts that you actually need, that you continue to remember and do and remember, therefore. So it's like a natural process that we do, that we suddenly realize, oh, I don't need that connection, and we just do it naturally. So that was what I saw. Do you have any?
It makes sense with you're not using that information anymore. So.
Right, so you just let it go. Yeah, which is why we don't remember everything when we were little too. So, but anyway.
Would that be like
You don't need the song. Yeah. Yeah. So we naturally let go of things. They call it pruning because we don't need that anymore. So, right. Like those kindergartners, they're not going to need to learn how to.
You're not going to get the duck song.
No, exactly. They're just not going to need that anymore. So, all right. Who wants to read 8 through 12? Okie doke.
Faith development begins to identify with my church, learn stories of the faith, understands God's in concrete terms, engages in acts of service and discipleship.
Yeah.
Physical development. Physical growth slows. Permanent teeth. Finer coordination, muscular growth, but wide the differences. Girls may enter puberty.
Oh, girls sometimes enter puberty a little earlier than boys. That's all.
Sometimes I'll be fine.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know some girls that enter in 9, when they're 9. So, yeah, that's why. But I wouldn't say guys don't. Boys do it sometimes at 12. So,
And 3 years of that age is a big difference.
very big difference.
Brain development. Second wave of
Gray matter.
huh?
Gray matter? That means the brain.
Yeah. The second wave of production of gray matter, the thinking part of the brain, the critical period of language acquisition ends.
Okay, so they pretty much have their language acquisition to a certain degree. I think the majority of it will be by this time. I just think I'm not sure exactly, maybe you know this more, but I think it's just that your brain, the way that you learn and so on, I think gets more developed at this point. It's like you start learning in the learning styles that you have and so on. So.
Mental and intellectual development. Concrete thinkers, stories give meaning to, and coherence to life. Develops ability to memorize, learn through projects, games, songs, and stories.
Yes, which I think you can add that earlier, but whatever.
Interpersonal relationships. Increasing empathy,
Clicks.
of some gender.
Same.
Sorry, yeah. My eyes and
Yeah, the font is not very good.
Fuzziness
Yes, it's not very great.
begins to develop loyalty, peers becoming more important but still wants to please significant adults. Belonging to groups is important.
Yes, peers becomes a very big deal in this age bracket, especially the later part, like 11, 12-year-olds. Which actually helps you understand like how you're going to group them, how they're going to be swayed. Like one kid might be really have an attitude problem, so you don't want to put him with, he's leading others away, so you need to work with that. So 13 through 14-year-olds. Oh, sorry, any questions and comments?
It seems it's so important in teaching in a church environment, because if they haven't taken anything or learned anything or grown, their memory is going to associate that with church.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're not going to want to go to church later because of the unconscious memory of it's just a dull place to be.
Right.
Or just thinking what you're combating with this new unreached generation. Generation Alpha doesn't have God in their culture. So the idea is like, if you're talking to a 12-year-old, they don't have the my church, they don't have the God in concrete terms.
Right.
So you're working to actually destroy synapses and like neuron pathways. Like you're working in the complete opposite. So like it's a lot of times, like, I think the Spirit can move, but it's actually going to take a lot longer to reach the younger generation now because they're actually creating brain pathways
Right.
against religion.
Hmm.
So I wonder,
And
the
actually,
spiritual aspect of it.
yeah, and also traditional ways of looking at gender
Yeah.
and family and all those kinds of things as well.
And when you're speaking to them an hour a week and they're getting it reinstated, I mean, that's like, the Holy Spirit's got to do something big.
Yeah. Yep, he does.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's something like completely foreign to me though, that idea of what they're hearing the opposite Monday through Saturday,
Hmm.
potentially, and then Sunday they come in and it's just like, well, my dad says this or my mom says this, and so it's just like looking at this from that perspective is crazy.
Disheartening.
Yeah.
I think though, you were talking about like how even young kids have like that idea of God, and there's a book I read called How God Changed the Brain, and it's like written by a couple, I think is agnostic and an atheist. Studies like how people do have a concept of God, and I think my thinking is, and it's also based on like I think Stephen Hebrews, like God has written himself on our hearts.
Hmm.
I think there's always that dialogue of like who is God and like how he plays into it, and so I guess in some ways it can be unwritten through the brain, but I don't think entirely like the concept of God. But just people get more stuff into it.
I agree. I do agree with that.
This is one of the reasons why a lot of apologetics teachers are saying that this is why apologetics in this age group is so important, because if it's just Bible stories, that's what they get, is the story, and it's just a fairy tale up in church, and not, you can't believe this because approach. And so some statistics really show that it's that when the church does not have apologetics in whatever various degrees or whatever, but that they can actually defend it, what they believe in, and it's just not, it becomes more than the story.
Hmm.
That is, the churches don't have that they, by the time that they are able to choose for themselves, they choose to not do it because it is just a story, so why should I believe it? And then they move on to whatever else.
So how would you handle this, speaking at like a Good News Club in America, like an after-school program,
Hmm.
hour after school, they just got done reading a two moms book or a two dads book, or my mom works there, in like her little group, third graders are reading a book about like
Oh,
two moms.
right. Got
So
it.
it's like you get into that, and then here you are
Changing dynamic of
changing
family.
that, and you have an hour of kids who just got out of school. Like, is it you handle it the same way as she did 5, or like practically where do
Right.
you?
Right.
Because
No,
you're going backwards.
it depends on like what's the ages of the kids.
They're third graders, so it's,
So they're 8-year-olds.
yeah.
Okay, so what have we already learned about teachers that seem to be doing it well? What's the biggest thing? What's the biggest thing that affects people to learn?
Their care.
Their care. So that would be the first thing,
Yeah.
because they become a trusted person in their life. And so I can't reiterate that enough, obviously, because that is like, it is the bottom line. And with your mom, like, taking time to pray and what can we do? Because God knows each one of those kids and how to reach them. I can't give you a formula. There is no formula. Because it's like God knows each one of the individual kids. That's why prayer is massively important. Me sitting here again asking you many questions about children. Did you notice that? We started again this week with all these questions about how you've taught, have you taught with kids? What do you have, what do you feel about kids? That's all part of the whole thing, It's like getting into their life and what they're thinking. And then when they have an issue, caring about it, just pulling them aside, talking to them. So, and then your example in your life do matter.